$378 billion worth of exchange cash from Mexico. Well, Peter Walt is the author of Drug War Mexico and is investigating the role of the financial industry in the rise of Mexico's cartels. I asked him how HSBC became the preferred bank for the drug gangs.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Earlier, at the beginning of the century, this century, HSBC buys up a Mexican bank, Banco Vital. Even though Banco Vital has issues with money laundering, and Mexico is rated by the American organization Global Financial Integrity as one of the highest risk countries for money laundering, for illicit flows of cash. The first one is China, second place is Mexico, and third place is Russia. So even despite the fact that there are signals that the banking industry in Mexico is compromised by its relationship with organized crime, HSBC nonetheless moves into Mexico and buys a bank and sets up an organization there.
So are you suggesting it was quite a sort of a calculated process? This was certainly not accidental? Is that what you're telling us?
The senior executives at HSBC are being warned by anti-money laundering controllers within the company that there are serious issues here. Those warnings get passed up to the top, and they're either ignored, or in some cases the whistleblowers like Carolyn Wind, Wyndham Clark and John Cruz eventually get fired. There are serious problems with this because Mexico is a high-risk country with high-risk clients, and yet the senior management within the company seems to be ignoring these things. It treats Mexico as a low-risk country.
We're hearing about HSBC in the headlines, but you've been covering money laundering for some time. I mean, how prevalent or how widespread is this?
My sense is that it's much more widespread, and that HSBC in a way is the tip of the iceberg. You may recall that just a couple of years ago, Wachovia, which is part of the Wells Fargo group, also received a fine for the same reason, because it was processing and laundering money on behalf of for example, the Sinaloa cartel, which is probably one of the biggest drug trafficking organizations in the world. The money was going through casas de cambio in Puebla. Casas de cambio are like bureau de change, or places where you do wire transfers. The investigation found that Wachovia did not apply anti-money laundering controls to $378 billion. That's equivalent to a third of Mexico's gross domestic product. The other banks have been accused by the US financial authorities. They include Citibank, Bank of America, the Spanish bank, Banco Santander. They've all been accused of these things and investigated to some extent as well. Yes, it's HSBC, and yes, it's Wachovia. Those are the ones that we definitely know about, but there are indications that it could be much more widespread than we know.
And how did the global financial crisis play into this, if it does at all?
The banks, because of the crisis, they need liquid assets, and here come along these organized crime syndicates, and they're giving the banks cash, essentially. It gives the banks, it props them up, and it gives them liquid assets. You know, I spoke to one former financial crime investigator from Scotland Yard a few weeks ago, and he suggested to me that really no Western governments are going to clamp down on this, because the banks need those assets. Otherwise, you know, they're going to go under, they're going to fail, and they're going to enter more periods of crisis and so on and so forth. So in some cases the banks are, you know, looking the other way. In some cases they're actively seeking out hot money.
And I guess one thing that I'm wondering too is, how much is there a correlation between the spike in drug violence that we've seen and the money laundering that's taken place? I mean, did this allow the drug cartels to essentially expand?
You know, the government in Mexico just produced figures in August this year that suggest that there have been about 100,000 murders between 2007 and 2011, with 27,000 homicides in 2011 alone. That's 3 every hour or 1 every 20 minutes, however you want to look at it. But so the violence has become, has got to a level which is quite unprecedented. But, you know, drug trafficking organizations they're very good capitalists. And what this is about the bottom line. It's about money, it's about profits. So the only way that the Mexican government and the US government can really address this, if they're serious about it, they need to start by dismantling the system that allows money laundering, or the laundering of these proceeds from the blood money essentially from organized crime. They need to clamp down on that, and they need to dismantle that system. They need to start in the City of London, they need to start in Manhattan, they need to start in Miami, they need to start in the Cayman Islands, because that's essentially the structure of organized crime.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for that. I appreciate all of those insights. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, that is all from the team here in Washington, D.C. for now. Thanks for watching Inside Story.